Concerning trends coming out of some new poll data. Are Canadians dumb enough to vote in Trudeau again? I sure hope not, but it's not out of the cards as of yet, so we are going to get into that as well. I do have another video about some rate cut predictions, some things that are happening. This will have a direct impact on cost of living, how Canadians are experiencing the housing crisis, and what is going to happen moving forward. And I also have a really interesting video on some old, but perhaps new, building options that we could have, which could also help with the building crisis and the housing crisis in Canada. So let's get into today's video.
Quite a good sized bedroom.
People looking to buy a home face two major barriers: high listing prices in many cities across Canada and interest rates at a 20-year high. It's a daunting prospect for those looking to enter the market.
It's unrealistic it will happen within 5 years without an incredibly high interest rate for a mortgage and the sizable down payment you have to make. So it's really about paying off the debt we've accumulated kind of coming out through our teens into our early 20s before then being able to apply for the mortgage to then make a down payment on a home.
So, little context there. If you are struggling with some debt issues, stuff that you've had from your past, see if there's a way that you can put the debt together, you can consolidate it, because what the banks care about is not the total dollars of debt, they care about the payments. So, this is, again, not financial advice, and talk to a broker, but what you can do is, let's say you have 3 payments of $200 each a month, that's $600 in payments, or you can consolidate, maybe get that down to $300 in payments, perhaps. These are options that could maybe help you afford a little bit more mortgage. And then, like I always say, guys, remember, you can buy a duplex at 5% down. Doesn't matter if you're older or younger. If you're older, it helps you with cost of living. If you're younger, it helps you find a way to get into the market, because you can still put 5% down and the income counts towards your mortgage qualification. A little bit of a side note.
With 4 months of the inflation rate being within the central bank's target range and the economy underperforming expectations, there's a chance Wednesday could result in the first key interest rate cut since the outset of the COVID-19 pandemic.
Interest rates are at a contractionary level now. We recognize that that is really creating a lot of hardship for many people in Canada, which is why we've been working so hard to create conditions that would allow rates to come down.
Inflation.
Their spending, which is making inflation worse, is also one of the problems, but they have been begging for rate cuts. Like, to hear the government being like, we want the bank to really be cutting, because they know, and we all know, if rate cuts don't happen before 2025, 2026, the housing market will be in big trouble. And I mean big trouble, because the people are renewing. I've always said, you know, I'm not worried about the 2024 renewals. It was the 2025 and the 2026. So they know they'll get blamed, because Canada will be in shambles if they don't go down.
Inflation took off back in 2021, hitting its peak of 8% in June 2022. Now, 2 years later, high interest rates have helped rein it in by slowing big-ticket spending. But with the average cost of a home in Canada sitting at more than $700,000, lower interest rates are just part of the affordability equation.
It's a box that's hard to escape from. We've had fairly stagnant wages in Canada for the last number of years, maybe a full decade. And how is it ever going to catch up to that massive jump in prices that occurred since 2021?
A key part of
Ron is a perma housing bear. You can look back on TV from 20 years ago and you're going to hear that guy shouting that Canadian prices were too expensive. That being said, I currently agree with him. I just wouldn't have agreed with him 20 years ago. But he's always been like that. So it's just, I wanted to put that in context too. He is a permanent bear who's like, housing is bad.
The government's plan to help more young people buy property, the First Home Savings Account. This was launched in 2022, and as of the end of last year, there are almost 625,000 active accounts. But the average deposit level, a little under just $3,800.
We've talked about that as well in other videos. The first-time home savings account is kind of a nonsense thing. Yes, it'll help you save a little bit more money, but the biggest issue, honestly, is going to be qualifying the mortgage, being able to actually afford the mortgage on the whole based on the price of the house. So yeah, it's a nonsense tool. It's another thing that the Liberals are doing to try and buy votes, which, speaking of which, let's get into this next video, because it might be working because Canadians are goofs.
This poll looks at ballot support for Canada's political parties, and here to break it down, the man himself, Nick Nanos, Chief Data Scientist at Nanos Research. Nick, good morning as always, sir. How are you?
I'm good, thanks, Roger.
Okay, let's talk parties right now. PCs have dropped. When was the last time we saw that?
Well,
Don't say last month.
But Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives have been riding a roller coaster, positive roller coaster if you're a Conservative. They're still at 42% nationally, which is an excellent score. And, the Liberals are at 26. Roger, if you remember, they've had upwards of a 20-point advantage. Now it's a 15 to 16-point advantage. But, the reality is that when we...
That is a concerning trend, is that we are losing so much of an advantage because it's this early in the race. And I think Canadians are just dumb enough that they could potentially, this is probably not going to happen, but the potential is there, they could vote in this goof again. Look at this. We have 22% of people who, again, this is just people polled, who still believe they want Trudeau as prime minister. That's 22% of crazies of the population. And then you got the 16.2% combined. You got, what's that, 38% of Canadians are nuts. And those are all the people who are like, well, yeah, never conservative. It's like, okay, guys, they gotta go. These guys gotta go. So, we're so far out from the election to see this gap getting closer.
Look at the numbers, you can see that at least that that's still there. And on the preferred prime minister front, Pierre Poilievre still way ahead, 37. He's unchanged in the last 4 weeks. Justin Trudeau, 22%, up 3 points. That's kind of on the cusp of the margin of error. And Jagmeet Singh back at 16 points.
But they're interesting. Trudeau and Singh are both up, but Poilievre is only down slightly. Where'd those numbers? Where'd they steal from?
Well, what's interesting is that on that front, what we saw was the People's Party down, and also a little bit of a wiggle on the Bloc and the Green Party. But when you look at the big national numbers, you can see the Conservatives at almost 42%, the Liberals at 26, NDP at about 19, with the NDP and the Liberals up and the Conservatives down. But you know what, Roger? Anyway, you cut it. I feel like Bill Murray in Groundhog Day. You remember that movie?
Oh yeah.
Wake up. You're punching the clock, and yeah, Conservatives 42, still ahead by a significant margin. So,
which is good to see the trend that Canadians have realized that Trudeau is a problem. I don't like to see that it's going down, but the trend is overall positive. Well, it's a little early to see about the down. I don't like that closing gap though.
For Pierre Poilievre, he's probably looking at it. Liberals might have a little bit of hope, but still too early to tell whether this is a new trend.
Yeah, and I mean, we're still we're a lifetime away from a possible election right now. So nobody can take it super serious. There's no guarantees in politics.
Super serious.
Yeah, is it kind of like dog years, Roger? Kind of elections? I don't know, but yeah, it's a far way off. Kind of like the opening for Star Wars in a galaxy far, far away.
Yeah, an election far, far away, right? Okay, let's get to the issues. What are Canadians talking about and thinking about?
Well, what we're seeing is an increasing number of Canadians are focused on inflation as the top national issue of concern, up a full 4 percentage points. Jobs at 12, down 2, healthcare at 10, environment at 9, housing at 9, debt and deficit at 5, down a little bit. But,
Okay, remember, when you are having conversations with your peers who are concerned about inflation, we have been over this, okay? Inflation is due to the debt and deficit. That is one of the reasons. It is also due to immigration and, of course, jobs and healthcare, environment, blah, blah, blah. But housing, those are going to be concerning issues. Again, why is healthcare getting worse? It is because of immigration. So these things are all related, and we know we've been talking about it in a ton of videos. So have those conversations and be like, hey, Trudeau, who's controlling the debt, who's controlling the immigration, is making all of these other top issues so much worse. And that's the thing. Those are two main triggers that the government actually can impact. These other ones are a lot harder to impact because here's the thing. Those are lower on the list than the things that are not controllable. That's why it's important to mention, yeah, the debt and the immigration are big issues causing things worse for all of these other main concerns, right? So that's why it's important for us to bring that up to people when they start worrying about, oh, but I need free stuff and he's going to give us this and he's going to help with this. It's free, it's spending, it's bad, and then he's going to increase immigration.
So what's interesting about inflation is that in the coming week, we're probably going to hear from the Bank of Canada as to what's going to happen with interest rates. Some of the signals is that there might be downward pressure, about 25 basis points. and probably speaks to people being squeezed on the inflation front, because that's the top national issue of concern.
And that's what everybody's been watching, right? They want to see the inflation. It's amazing how you become aware of things when it has such a huge impact. If your mortgage rates are waiting for the inflation levels to come down to a point, you want to see it drop a little bit and get it under control, right?
Of course, and I'm a real estate agent in London, Ontario. Reach out to me in the link below if you want to work with me or my team all the way across Canada. But you'd think I'd really want the rates to come down, and I do certainly want them to come down, but I don't want it to turn into this major spending spree from the government because the rates have gone down, because our economy is not doing great overall, especially when you look at our GDP per capita, which has been falling. But when it comes to the housing crisis, which that could potentially help for, this next video has some big information, because there is some new material trends we're seeing that could help us build potentially faster.
This Edmonton factory is making glue laminated timber, or glulam, a type of mass timber that can replace beams made of steel.
So how's business these days?
Well, business is booming.
So much so, the company is building a new 155,000 square foot factory.
We are filling capacity slots about 10 months out from today. So yes, the phone's ringing off the hook.
A growing interest, but still relatively rare. An RBC report says mass timber accounts for just about 1% of North American building materials, though building codes are changing to allow more of it. Some provinces will allow up to 18 stories, the height of this student residence at the University of British Columbia.
18 stories is huge and would kind of be groundbreaking if we could get more buildings built with the timber. So I, like a lot of things about the country of Japan. They do a lot more timber building, and it just makes things look nicer. It's sustainable. It's environmentally friendly. So I'd like to see that. 18 stories is nuts.
Developers like mass timber because it comes together quickly.
For example, our building on 5 here at Ontario and 5th in Vancouver was erected in 12 days.
Proponents say,
whoa, 12 days to get a building erected is like wild. That's actually, see, look how much nicer it looks too. So I'm not an architecture expert, but when you walk into a building like this, it just feels nicer. It feels like, as humans, you get access to the lumber and the wood. Like, we're not supposed to be surrounded by steel and concrete all the time, especially this like brutalism architecture, which is like modern and soul crushing. When you walk into this, like, that would be great.
It's also more eco-friendly than concrete and steel.
Wood is the lowest carbon building material available. We're not saying we're eliminating concrete. We're not saying we eliminate steel. We need those things to work in concert with wood to create these safe, affordable, low carbon, net zero buildings.
Still, uptake of mass timber has been uneven across the country, and some builders are reluctant to switch. Plus, some researchers say if we want to protect the environment, the last thing we should do is cut down more trees.
The most valuable thing we can do with forests is to leave them standing and growing.
Yeah, but the issue there is now you continue to use steel and you continue to use concrete, and those are way worse in the carbon impact, if you guys even care about that. I'm saying from their argument perspective, it's way worse from a carbon standpoint. Wood is renewable, and obviously we can have better forest management. We can have areas that we specifically are taking from, and it would be better overall. Don't forget to buy the Axe Attacks merch. The link is down below. I'm a real estate agent. The link is there as well. Like and subscribe. But honestly, guys, thank you so much for watching. It really helps the channel grow. You guys rock. So have a great rest of your day.